At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth from Forbes and various other places.
And I'm Sam Abul-Samad from Navigant Research and various other places as well.
And I'm Rebecca Linland from Rebecca Drives and Venus, apparently, because I'm a woman.
Well, I mean, you could also say various other places and keep. We're all from various other places.
I had to try. I had to mix it up a little.
Yeah, we are all made of stars. So anyway,
speaking of not rambling,
yeah. Listen, if it keeps on raining, the levee's going to break. I need a little bit of an.
But this is appropriate though because it's the last week of Big Bang Theory, one of my favorite shows.
Really?
Of all time.
I think I watched a half an episode once.
Oh my gosh. I could watch it for hours and hours.
So it is what is it? It's the 14th today? The
15th.
Yeah, 14th of May, 2019.
I thought it was the 15th.
No, I think Rebecca's right. I think it's the 15th.
It is the 15th.
There was a surprisingly sentimental send-off for the show on All Things Considered today.
Oh, there was?
Yeah, so you should go find it.
I'll listen.
I'm sure they've got it.
I'll listen.
So, yeah, I've never watched an episode.
Oh, my gosh. It is so incredibly funny. It's so cleverly done. That's what I love about it. It's very cleverly written.
Well, you know what? We'll just watch it in reruns because then I can binge on the whole
Okay.
series. So anyway, we'll talk about cars. But hey, before we get into that, I actually I managed to go to an event and see the Jeep Gladiator and the new Ram HD trucks. They brought them to New England, and so, man, the Gladiator is really impressive. It's you guys have both had more time with it, but
I haven't.
It's not. It's not as super long in person as it is in pictures. I thought you had been up close to it too.
Well,
Sam,
I've seen it up close at the auto shows, but I haven't driven it yet.
Yeah,
so I drove it.
They had it. So I didn't actually. I got there a little late because Boston traffic. So I did not drive it, but that's coming.
Yes.
I was surprised that they're only offering it with the V6. That was interesting to me. And I also thought it was really interesting. It's this interesting mashup of Ram 1500 and Wrangler in terms of the frame. They were saying that the rear axle is basically a 5-link setup that's got a lot more in common with the Ram than it does with the Wrangler and the Wrangler Unlimited. So that, to me, says that frame actually does have a future as a mid-size Ram pickup. So I thought that was interesting. Yes. And the Ram HDs are so classy.
So good.
They are.
So good.
Oh, my goodness. So thank you. And anybody who works at Chrysler and who listens to the podcast, or if you want to pass it along like that, thank you for bringing them to New England. Please bring more of your stuff. FCA's my favorite because I like them. They're nice people. I'm going to completely declare my bias. So anyway, let's talk about what we're driving. And Rebecca, because it's been raining in New England for like 2 months, you had a Miata, because why not?
Of course I did. Yes.
So how is it? Is it full of water?
Was it the convertible or the RF?
It was the RF, but so it was the RF. So it did have the convertible top though, but there's different versions of it apparently. I mean,
I guess soft top versus RF.
Yeah, it was the hard top, which I got to put down on Saturday for a short time. So it's when they delivered the vehicle, I said to the guy, every time I have a Miata, it rains. And this time, not only did it rain every day except Saturday, I ended up signing up for this class, this Lean Six Sigma class that is in Manhattan. And I basically leave the house at by 7 in the morning, and I get back at 7 at night. And I put almost no miles on this sweet ride, which was tragic. The miles I did put on it were so much fun. So much fun. It's just, it's this purity of mobility that we don't always get to experience. I mean, the 6-speed manual transmission is so good. It just provides this incredible amount of old style driving engagement, that you just don't have with cars today. And a typical, especially, whether it's a sedan or an SUV or whatever, like I felt so connected to the road and to my environment when I did have the top down. The short drive to the train station, it was just fun. I just felt cool. I felt like somebody that didn't have a care in the world, and I just loved it. I loved it. I hated to see it go.
That's why I own a Miata.
Wow.
Because it puts a smile on my face every time.
Every time.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that really astounds me about the Miata is when it came out, it was this return to that elemental car, because there wasn't really anything like it on the market in 89 or 90. I think 89.
It was 89. This year at the Chicago Auto Show was the 30th anniversary of the original introduction of the Miata at the 89 Chicago show.
That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Anyway.
And did you meet the guy, Sam, as well? I couldn't remember. I can't think of his name
Bob Hall?
right now.
Or the other guy, the
Japanese gentleman whose name I should remember, because we've been...
Yeah, I know. I can't remember his name now either.
My gosh.
There was a big crowd around him, and I didn't have a chance to talk to him. I did chat briefly with Bob Hall, who was the American product planner, and the twin brother of Jim Hall, who currently works at GM.
Right.
And you and I both know Jim. Do you know Bob?
Right.
Jim has great stories.
Oh, yes.
So the fun thing, and I have to look it up because it's going to drive me crazy. And actually, I meant to do this a while ago, so I apologize, is that I did get a chance to talk to him, and it was just so much fun. And one of the things that he said was that when they were building it, when they were designing it, he really, I said, did you know you were designing an icon? And he said, no, we were just designing something we could afford to buy.
Yeah, because by that time in the late 80s, by the time they would have started that project in probably 85 or 86, the last of the classic British roadsters were gone. Triumph,
right? The
Triumph brand was gone. There were no more of, Lotus wasn't building anything like that at the time. The Elise was the original, or rather, the Elan was long since out of production. I think MG roadsters were gone by that point. So, yeah, I mean, there wasn't anything like that.
The only thing you could get that was that classic roadster was the Alpha. The Alpha was still here until like 91 or 92.
The Alpha Spider was still hanging in there for a while.
But it was old and expensive.
Yeah.
The Miata was... it was like this MGB that, the MGB left the U.S. in, 80? And so there was this period of time where we didn't have anything like that. And so the Miata came out and it was about 1,800 pounds, and it was fun, and it didn't leak. It didn't break.
Right. It ran reliably.
Yeah. So it did all of that stuff that those cars did, and it did it better. And it's still about 1,800 pounds, and it doesn't leak, and it doesn't break. And they've left some body roll in there so you can have a good time.
Oh my gosh.
Without having to go too fast.
So fun.
And it's comfy. It's just, it's a great car.
It's got a little more power now than before, but still a really fabulous balance.
Yeah, this one has the 4-cylinder, the 2.0 liter 4-cylinder, 181 horsepower, and then the price point. The base was 32. The one that I drove had, it had the Brembo with the black roof, which was really cool. So that was really nice. 38,000. It tops out at 38.3. So, again, it's just for the fun. And there were small things that I really liked about it. The heated seats were super comfortable. The whole interior is focused on driving. It's just about the drive. And, I would have liked to have had power seats only because it does sit really low and I'm really short. And so some of that, came into play a little bit. But even then I figured out the right seating position, and it was just fun. It was just fun.
Yeah. Once you set the seats, they're done. Once you set them once, right? I mean, for us,
because it's not like you're ever going to let
cars,
anybody else drive your Miata.
No.
Exactly.
Right.
There were some times though when I felt like I was sitting really low, and some of the roads in my area are so curvy and they go up and down, and there were times when I felt like I couldn't really see over the wheel.
Yeah, so I guess that's my question. It's probably easy to say how much fun it is. So, you expect that car to be fun, you expect to love it. So I don't know. Let's try to counterbalance that. I guess it's like sort of what are some of the downsides, even just compared to other convertibles or sporty cars.
Well,
I'm trying to think about what it competes.
So I'll tell you,
you don't have any cargo space.
Right. There's no cargo space, but I will tell you one thing though. So I was coming home very late one night, and a deer ran out almost directly in front of me.
Or you just go under it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was whites of the eyes kind of thing. And fortunately, I was able, I wasn't going fast. I slammed on my brakes, but I thought, man, that deer probably weighs 1,000 pounds. I mean, if that had happened,
that's probably about 150 to 200 pounds.
Probably
tops.
about, I would say 200 pounds, but
you know what? I don't want to hit it.
Exactly.
No, it would do a lot of damage.
And I also did avoid the highway because not the Merritt Parkway, which is a super fun road to go on, a 2-lane road, but Route 95 was not going to be any fun in the rain also. So there's puddles that are significant based on just the kind of rain that we had. So there are some downsides to it. I could never have it as my only vehicle. The the lack of cargo. Although I will say that I had to do some shopping. I did some grocery shopping, and the trunk is pretty good. It's pretty deep. So I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, and we're in this age where they'll deliver anything.
That is an excellent point.
Very true.
That's why you have Grubhub and Postmates and Instacart and all these other services.
Also, but hilariously too, and I don't know if they still make it, but I've seen Miatas with trailer hitches.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it can be done.
But yeah, it was delightful. So what did you guys drive?
Yeah, Sam, you're riding in the lap of luxury this week.
Well, we'll come back to what I was driving yesterday. Today I'm not driving anything because I'm stuck in Santa Clara for a conference for another day.
I'm stuck in California.
Well, it's raining
Darn.
here too, actually.
That's true.
It was beautiful yesterday, but we'll get back to that. But before I left Michigan, I was driving the Chevy Blazer. The Blazer RS to be specific, with all-wheel drive.
Oh, that's not exactly the lap of luxury, but that's an interesting car because,
interesting is a very good word for it.
Yeah, there's controversy about it. So where do you come down on it? Are you impressed or not impressed, or do you care? Is it much ado about nothing? Or
I have a very hard time wrapping my head around $52,000 for that vehicle.
Wait, which particular model of
the
Blazer
RS.
is it? The RS.
Yeah, with all-wheel drive. So it had, and it had the driver assist package and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, it was pretty well loaded. It had heated seats,
I guess.
heated and cooled seats, and heated steering wheel, and everything else. But still, I guess this is a recurring problem that in our conversations is vehicles just getting too damned expensive.
Yeah, I mean, RS must stand for really expensive. I mean, like that's just crazy.
Well, even
for
the
a
base Blazer, the Blazer L, the cheapest version with the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder and front wheel drive, starts at $30,000. And then things go up from there.
Wow.
It's price aside, this is an interesting vehicle. It's a midsizer, so it's bigger than an Equinox, smaller than a Traverse. I think it's maybe the same wheelbase length as the GMC Acadia, and it's built off the Lambda platform, that is used by the Acadia and Buick Enclave and the Chevy Traverse.
Cadillac, right?
So it's think of it, as kind of Chevy's version of what Honda did with the Passport. Create a little bit smaller midsize 2-row crossover from their big 3-row crossover. But what Chevrolet has done that's different is that the design of this thing is very different from any other GM crossover. There's a fair bit of Camaro inspiration in the design. It's got a high belt line. Relatively mediocre visibility out the back. Not as bad as a Camaro. It kind of towards the C-pillar, it sweeps up and away. So it's trying to give it a sportier look. The front end is, you get these very slim horizontal daytime running lamps, and then the larger headlamps down below, which is an interesting look. And I think my issue with the design is that there are certain elements of the design that work pretty well in isolation, but I'm not sure the whole thing works as a unit. So the front end by itself looks kind of interesting, looks kind of good. The back end, like the rear 3/4 view, it's got this nice wide athletic stance to it. I guess the middle part is the part that I'm not thrilled about.
Where they stitch the two ends together.
Yeah. Driving it.
I'm also not pleased with my middle.
Yeah. Well,
which one did you have? Because the one that the launch, when I went on the launch, the one that I had, the RS, and mine as tested was 41,000.
Yeah, well, the RS does start at, it's 41.8 is the starting price for the RS.
Right.
But as has become all too common with GM vehicles of late, you can, they've followed the German premium brand philosophy of, you can really crank up the price with injudicious use of the options list.
But see, that's okay when you're a German brand like BMW or Mercedes. When you are an American brand like Chevy, where buyers expect value, like you're going to wind up with this thing just sitting there on the lot, and you're going to have to put $7,000 on the hood of it just to get it moved off to a buyer.
And that $42,000 base price is for front wheel drive. If you want all wheel drive, then it adds another couple of grand to that.
Right.
That cranks it up. Now you're starting at $44,700. So $2,500 more or $2,700 more to go all wheel drive. And then the one I had the optional larger black wheels, black alloy wheels, and it had all the driver assists and pretty much all the other options on this thing. So it starts to add up really fast. It was in the red hot with the black perforated leather interior, the seats, and the enhanced convenience and driver confidence package. There was another $3,600 that gets you the 8-inch screen with navigation and the rear camera mirror system, which I really like the rear camera mirror system, especially on a vehicle like this with limited rear visibility.
Yeah.
The Sun and Wheels package is another $2,500 with the 21-inch black wheels and all season tires. And it just keeps adding up. And it ended up about $52,000.
Wow, because the other one I drove a few weeks ago. I had the Premier all-wheel drive, and that topped out at 46. That actually had no options to it. And then the destination charge is $11.95. So that one, man, I mean, that's just incredible. That was not the RS version, though, which they do add some some cosmetic things too.
Yeah, but what are they hoping for?
Well, this is
with.
I'm sorry.
No, carry on.
I think they're trying to attract, a younger buyer who's interested in, something that's sporty looking, kind of has a sporty attitude to it, but wants a utility, doesn't want a Camaro, basically
Right.
somebody that wants the kind of Camaro DNA, but not necessarily, but doesn't want a coupe, wants something.
But don't those people just buy the fancy Silverado that's like the Camaro version of the Silverado?
No, this. I'm one of these buyers. So it's for smaller households. It's for singles. It's for people that have a smaller lifestyle, if you will. But
it's not.
We want utility. But we still want plenty of utility because this, and I found the exact same thing with the Passport, which actually just got delivered today, and I went on that launch as well. But this is a vehicle that for me, it kind of hits that sweet spot where if I have friends over, if I'm going to a store and I'm buying, I don't know, if I'm going to Home Depot and buying a bunch of plants. But it's not that it's big enough for that, but it's not so big that when I go to the train station or if I'm on a commute, if I'm taking a commute or something, that I don't feel like I'm slogging around with a big car. It just kind of hits that sweet spot, really.
I will have to reserve some judgment until I get a chance to really like sniff around when I drive one, but like. It strikes me as one of those vehicles that's bigger on the outside than it turns out to be on the inside, and so its utility is limited because
it's actually
this
one is actually pretty well sized inside as well. I mean, there's plenty,
that's good.
There's plenty of room in the second row seat because one thing they didn't do is they didn't try to squeeze in a cosmetic third row seat.
Right.
So it's strictly a 5-seater, and it's got a good amount of cargo space in the back. Very healthy cargo area, plenty of legroom and headroom in the back. Because of the design, it does have a very high belt line. So you do have that kind of sitting in a bathtub feel of the Camaro, except you're still sitting.
And maybe
you're sitting up higher, but still sitting in a bathtub. So you're in an elevated bathtub.
And that's what gives me the impression that it's going to be one of those typical space inefficient things. It's just because it has that belt line. It looks chunky from the outside.
Yeah, it does look that way, but it's actually it's quite reasonably well. It's well packaged inside, so that's not an issue.
Good for them.
And go ahead, Rebecca.
No, go ahead, Sam, please.
That Camaro theme also continues to the inside with the big round. The circular vents, and they copied the thing that the current Camaro has with the two vents in the center, at the bottom of the center stack. What the Camaro and this one have is the temperature controls are actually the bezel around the two central vents. So you reach down and just twist the bezel around the vent to adjust the temperature. So rather than having a separate knob, it's literally integrated with the vent, which is I think it's well executed.
That's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to use. It's you can do it, but you don't have to look at it. You can do it by feel, unlike a touchscreen, which is always the wrong answer in a car.
We've made it all the way there, where now touchscreens are never acceptable.
Yes.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
And this one did have all the driver assist stuff. It had adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist and blind spot monitoring and all that other stuff. And of course the camera mirror, which is an interesting touch if you've never tried it before. What this does, they're using the rear camera. It gives you an unobstructed and the entire mirror assembly. There's also a standard mirror there, so when you flip it down, like in the old days, you could flip your mirror up and down, and one side, in one position, it would be coded for nighttime driving. So if, when there's headlights behind you, it dims that. Now instead of that, when you flip the mirror, it goes from a conventional mirror to turning on the LCD that's overlaid on it, and then you get the view from the camera looking out the back. So it's unobstructed by the rear seat headrests and the pillars and everything else. You have a perfectly clear view. You can also you can adjust the brightness of that display and also adjust the zoom factor. So if you want to see a wider angle view, you can get a wider angle view or get it closer to a natural view similar to what you would get from the standard mirror.
Yeah, I've tried it in something. I forget which GM car I had it in. It confused me. Like, I'd have to spend more time with it.
It does take a little getting used to relative to a mirror, but I think it as we get vehicles that have these severely obstructed rear views, especially SUVs and crossovers that are sitting up high and often have a very obstructed view out the back, I think that this is a great alternative, that gives you better situational awareness of what's behind you.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty cool. I liked the GM, the mirror. It does take a minute, but overall, I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, and what impresses me, I didn't realize you can get a Blazer with up to 4,500 pounds of towing capacity too, which is it's better than I expected. So.
Yeah, and the 3.6 liter V6, is a great engine. It's always been a really good engine for GM. This thing's it's reasonably quick. It's not going to challenge Porsche Cayennes and things like that, but it's got plenty of performance. And the 9-speed automatic transmission is a reasonably smooth shifter, so it's a good powertrain. It's the RS is a little bit stiffer than I guess the other versions of the Blazer, but it's not back pounding. It's a good combination, I think.
I predict they're going to have trouble moving too many $52,000.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, is the price point.
Yeah, and to your point, I was just looking. I just recently had the Lexus NX 300, which is in some ways comparable. It's a little bit smaller, but
it's quite a bit smaller than this thing.
Well, but that goes for $49,000. And, the thing is that when you think about just the residual value alone, the Lexus is going to hold up, I think, more than
the Chevy's going to drop like a stone.
Yeah, so the price, that 50 and changes that's high for sure.
Yeah,
I do think that's a rare buyer that's going to buy the RS and then option the crap out of it.
But you know what though, it looks great though. I prefer the RS version because I know when they dropped off the one that I had, the all-wheel drive premium, I was like, oh yeah, the RS really is very sharp looking. So,
and the red, the combination of the red and the black, most of the body's red, and you've got the black wheels and the black rockers. So it is a pretty good color combination. I like that a lot.
It looks great. I think it looks great on the road.
And the interior of this thing, compared, we talked a week or so ago about the Ranger, and I was complaining about how the interior of the Ranger felt cheap, at $42,000 for the Lariat. This one is definitely much better than that. Is it $52,000 good? Maybe, but it's definitely definitely a lot better than the Ranger was.
Well, it's funny you should mention the Ranger because that's what I drove last week. Was a Ranger Lariat FX4, and in some ways, I think it has one of the better Ford truck interiors, which is damning with faint praise because Ford truck interiors aren't that good. But it's mostly because the materials like on the upper door panels and the dashboard are pretty nice, but everything else is not really all that nice, like you said. So it's good that the Blazer actually has an interior that somewhat more lives up to its price. I think that's an area where a lot of car makers, I consistently see Toyota and Ford and the GMs that I have managed to get into lately, they all sort of fall down on that job. They're getting better in their own respects, but the Ranger was it was an interesting thing to be in, especially in light of your commentary about it. It really made me stop and kind of evaluate the truck. It was also interesting driving it after having checked out the Gladiator. the very same day. I like it a lot. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. In terms of the compact pickups, does the Ranger
Midsize
get near the top of your list for you guys?
I think
I haven't
powertrain,
driven.
yes. Powertrain, yes. Kind of the overall package, I would say yes. I was actually just in another Ranger this morning, had breakfast with somebody and gave me a ride back to the hotel here in his Ranger, and he's got the crew cab. And I think the crew cab is a much better package, although it's a shorter bed length. So if you need a longer bed, did you have the crew cab or the super cab?
I had the crew cab.
Okay.
And the crew cab is not all that big. The back seat, that was one of my complaints, is that there's not a ton of legroom back there.
Yeah, well, you should try the crew the other cab, the extended cab.
Yeah. That's one where you just fold the seats up, right? And you just use it as storage. And the shorter 5-foot bed is still pretty useful if you're going to use it as a truck. I think for this class of truck, really, my top choice is always going to be the Ridgeline, because for me, I'm coming at it with the compact truck is the weekend, more so the weekend guy who's using it for those, around the home tasks.
But something like the Ranger or the Colorado, is, while I agree that for the person who's mainly going to use it as a daily driver and occasionally haul some stuff, the Ridgeline may be a better choice. Did I say Ridgeline? Ridgeline.
Yeah.
The Ranger, something like the Ranger is definitely more capable. It's got a lot more towing capability.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Certainly, it's powerful. It's got better brakes than the Ridgeline. The Ridgeline, certainly a lot more comfortable to drive when it's unloaded. The ride quality is a lot better when it's unloaded. Although, if you're going to be hauling heavy stuff, when you load up the bed of a Ranger, it really settles down much better. But that's true.
This is the thing. Like, if you're going to use it as that occasional truck user and you just want to have the capability, but you're going to generally use it as a commuter car, you're kind of doing a disservice, because all of the things you said are absolutely true. It actually has a pretty impressive tow rating of 7,400 pounds, which is that's pretty good. The powertrain is fantastic. The 10-speed auto and the 2.3-liter EcoBoost are great. It returns about 20.8 or 21 miles per gallon. So I wasn't offended by that. I thought that was pretty good fuel economy for what it is. It was quiet. It was pretty well composed on the road. I did notice that it feels like it's tuned to be a truck that wants to feel bigger than it is, and I've picked up that some reviews where they feel like it's actually underdamped and it really comes out when you have it off road, where it's capable, but it sort of bounces you around the cabin where other trucks sort of soak that stuff up. I didn't have a chance to really put that to the test. It felt fine on the road and pretty much whatever I wanted to throw at it. So, as a package, I think it's quite good. There are places where you get the impression this is a rest of the world truck that they cleaned up and brought here.
Yeah,
to this
very
market.
much so.
But I don't think that's bad. I like some of that truckiness in its demeanor, because that's what it's supposed to be, So it is a really. I thought it had a lot of charm to it, and I can see the value. It's very comfortable. The price is, it climbs up there. This one was 40, I want to say 44, 45. So but it had, again, it's the FX4, it was the Lariat, it had a bunch of other, packages on it. So there's really nowhere else to go with options. It's a pretty full boat. So yeah, when you get all the stuff, when you check all the boxes, it's going to cost you money. You can get an XL for 24. In two-wheel drive regular cab, like the Fleet model.
Yeah, with the steel wheels and everything,
Yeah, which I think it looks fantastic like that.
Yeah.
And B, the fleets and the actual like truck buyers that buy trucks to use them as work vehicles, that's the one they're going to buy, and it's a really well suited truck for that. So I think
even the XLT starts at 29 or 29.9, 30,000, and I think for most customers that want something like a Ranger, I would say the XLT is a better choice. As I said last time, because I think that the interior, at $30,000, that interior, makes more sense. When you get above $40,000, it feels cheap.
Yeah, it's fine. And at that $30,000 price level, and even at like 40 something, we're going to complain about it. I don't know that a buyer is going to complain about it. I mean, you've seen what they get away with in the F series, so I don't know that it's really that much of an issue. But I feel for me, given what we can see going on in Ram, where the interiors are just gorgeous for the money, everything else gets benchmarked against that because we see those. And a Ford Ranger buyer, they don't have a choice at FCA yet, other than the Gladiator, which is its own thing. And B, I don't really know that they're going to care. But I was impressed with how competitive the Ranger felt, because I didn't expect it to feel sort of that much in the fight. And yeah, if you do need a work truck, you need something with a little bit of capability and a little bit bit of beefiness. It's got it's got a strong backbone, and it can get to work, and it looks good. It drives nice. I'm surprised how much I liked it.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah. All right. So let's hit some topics. And Sam, we can tee this up later on as well. But you attended a thing with Ford. You didn't get to drive the new Shelbys, but you got to be around them, which I thought was pretty cool.
I did not get to drive the GT500, but they brought us out to M1 Concourse in Pontiac, which is it's a facility in Pontiac, Michigan, north of Detroit, with garages. Basically, sort of a country club for car collectors. And they sell garages there of various sizes where you can store your cars, and there's lofts in there. And some of these garages are really decked out, and there's some really expensive machinery there. Ford borrowed one that's owned by the LaFontaine family that owns a bunch of dealerships in the Detroit area for an event for the 2019 GT350, Shelby GT350, which got some updates this year. They had a couple of GT500s parked out there, but they would not let us drive them, unfortunately. But they wanted to show us the updates to the GT350, which we've talked about before. You had one last year, I think, and
yes, I adored that car. Holy crap!
So this is the Mustang with the 5.2 liter flat plane crank V8, and that engine is just glorious. It revs to 8,250 RPM redline. And at M1 Concourse, they have a little 1.5 mile track that owners of the garages can use, and it also gets rented out for various events. And it's a tight little course, 10-turn course with a variety of different kinds of corners, and we got to do laps in the GT350. The big updates for this year, they've got a new rear spoiler on the base model. Instead of the little lip spoiler they had before, it's got a larger spoiler, but it's got a couple of ducts underneath there to reduce the drag. So it generates more downforce, but still has less drag than before. And there's an optional handling pack that you can get for the GT350 that includes a gurney flap that you can bolt on the back of that. They recommend not driving with the gurney flap all the time. Just put it on when you're going to track days, because it does add quite a bit more drag, and it'll cost you about 2 miles per gallon in highway driving. But and then that package also has adjustable strut tower mounts, so you can dial in more camber if you want on the track. But the other thing that changed is Michelin developed some a new tire formula for the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires that are on there. So they're they've got an FP molded into the sidewall of these, and these were custom developed for Ford Performance to have more grip, but also a more progressive breakaway. So tires, one of the things about tires is, when they start to lose traction, there's what's called a mu slip curve, and mu being the traction, the amount of friction between the tire and the road, and then the slip. And a lot of really high performance tires have the mu climbs up to a peak, usually somewhere in the 10 to 15% slip range, and then falls off. The way that curve falls off will give you an idea of how that tire is going to behave. If you have a really peaky, really sharp peak on that curve, and the traction falls off once you get past that peak, then
oh boy, that's fun.
well, that's one word that you could use, but not necessarily for more novice, or you're not really highly skilled drivers. When with a tire like that, when it breaks away, it just snaps. It's really hard to recover. And so this new tire that they've developed, has a different compound, different tread design, and even a different internal construction from the standard Pilot Cup Sports. And so it breaks away more progressively. So basically what that means is as it starts to slide, you can feel it sliding and you can recover it more easily. And it's actually more fun to drive. And one of the things, talking to Carl Widman, who's the chief engineer on Mustang, describing kind of what they're trying to do differently, to separate the GT350 from the GT500, aside from the 500 obviously having a lot more power with its supercharged engine. He said the 350 is designed to flatter the driver. So somebody who wants to really go out and push it, but isn't necessarily a really highly skilled professional racer, can go out and really push this and have a lot of fun with it without necessarily getting themselves into a lot of trouble. When it starts to slide, they can get it back. And we could feel that, and so they use that to retune the suspension a little bit, to retune the ABS, to open up its thresholds a little bit, to give you a little more slip, and allow you to have a little more fun with it. And it was amazing on the track.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of those cars that even if you have an allegiance, you can appreciate it. That's just, I mean, there's not too many cars like that anymore, especially. And so let's all be glad that they make it and they continue to improve it. And it's a really good time. And, Ford takes this stuff seriously. And you had an interview, which we'll tack on to the end of the episode here. But you had an interview with Amy Mirentic, and she's in charge of looking after the icons.
Yeah, she's head of strategy and marketing for the Ford Icons Group, which is something new that they've created in the past year. In the time since they announced that they were going to discontinue most of their cars except for the Mustang, so they've traditionally they've had groups that were in charge of cars at Ford, trucks, and SUVs. And now they have trucks, SUVs, and this group they're calling Icons. And Amy, explained, kind of what the strategy is there. But, for Icons, the grouping of vehicles under Icons includes the Mustang and the Shelby models, but it also includes the Raptor, the upcoming Bronco, and the new electric SUV that's coming in early 2020. Which we will be seeing
which
later
may or may not be called the Mach 1.
It will not be called the Mach 1.
Okay.
It's that much we know. The Ford has said that, but the rumor is that it will be called the Mach E for electric.
Are you seriously?
Yeah, I know.
Hey, you know what? The branding is hard.
Yeah.
Branding is hard, and when you've got a bunch of heritage stuff like that, like it's also adds another wrinkle.
Maki? It sounds like a tuna fish.
Yeah.
That's Maki. Sorry.
It should be very interesting. I had a brief chat with Amy She was at the GT350 event last week, and she kind of talked about what the strategy is around the Icons group. So hopefully,
I do like that. I do like the fact that they're doing that. I think it's, we've talked before about being good stewards of a brand, and I like the fact that Ford is doing this. I think it's a very clever way of embracing, acknowledging, and building on legacy and a strong foundation without always looking to the past, or being stuck in the past. So I think that's a really cool. I like the fact they call it Icons, because these names and these products, at least the legacy of them, they are iconic in our culture, and I think that's terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really commend Ford.
Mustang and Bronco.
Exactly. So I really commend Ford for doing that. I think that that's a really clever, modern way of building on their legacy. So well done.
Well, yeah, and those are the true believers that are invested emotionally and, if they buy them, financially in Ford, if they're buying into those icon vehicles. So those are people that you get a certain value out of them as brand ambassadors and just
Sure.
loyal fans. So yeah, it's good. You keep those folks happy and you give them something to talk about. You give all of us also something to talk about. So that's good. We'll tack that on to the end of the episode. But let's jump over across town to GM, who apparently is getting more money to put into Cruise from. Are they getting it from SoftBank, who is like investing in everything everywhere?
Yeah, well, SoftBank already put in a couple of $1 billion into Cruise for, I think, a 14% stake about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. And they're between SoftBank, Honda, and GM, they're putting another $1.1 billion into, and also some additional new institutional investors. They're putting another total of $1.1 billion into GM Cruise, which is a separate business unit. It's currently majority owned by GM. That may or may not continue to be the case in the future, but it's owned by GM, and this is their autonomous driving unit. That's developing not only the automated driving system, but also the ride-hailing platform that will utilize this vehicle.
So now Cruise is worth $19 billion.
Yeah, the valuation based on this new investment. So far investors have put in a total of $7.2 billion into Cruise, and based on that, the total market cap of that company is $19 billion.
$19 billion.
For a company that so far has exactly $0 of revenue and no actual business.
Well, and that's insane to me because GM's market cap, the last time I checked, is about $50 billion.
Yeah.
Or 53, something like that. So that's starting to get a little out of whack, in my opinion.
Welcome to the world of technology company valuations.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what is GM like? What are they hoping to get out of this continued investment? At a certain point, like it feels like they're just going to bleed cash out of investors.
Well, I think what it is, that they're building a business, a new kind of business here with GM Cruise. But they, as most other companies that aren't called Tesla, they also realize, this is going to take some time to build up to scale, to get to significant volumes where they're generating real significant revenues and hopefully at some point actual profits. And, in the meantime, there's still a lot of development work to do. There's a lot of investment that needs to be done. If you're going to deploy an automated mobility service fleet in a city, you've got to set up depots, you've got to set up, the back-end infrastructure, data centers, and, there's all kinds of things that need to be done to turn this into an actual working business. And
that's like all of that is non-car stuff. That's
most of it is non-car
assets.
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the infrastructure that you need. Plus, you've got, they're growing the staff of GM Cruise to 2,000 employees. They're currently at about 1,200, and that those people need to be paid. So that the company, because of the way it's structured, technically as a separate company from General Motors, they need working capital, and so this is going to give them some additional working capital to keep them going until they can start to get to, hopefully at some point, positive cash flow and be able to fund themselves.
When they deploy and plan to put an actual offering out there, A, I guess, what's it going to be? And then B, are they looking at being one of the companies that owns the fleet versus the model now where you personally own the car and but you set your Tesla up to be a robotaxi?
Yeah, so the initial offering is going to be a ride-hailing service, like Uber or Lyft, but using these automated GM Chevy Bolts, and they will be adding other services to that, so things like food deliveries, package deliveries, but the Bolt itself, while it's well suited as a ride-hailing vehicle because it's easy to get in and out of, fairly tall, good for urban environments because it's got a small footprint, it's not ideally suited, to those other use cases which they're going to need, in order to get the utilization up so they can try to get to profitability. So GM and Honda are also collaborating on development of a next generation vehicle which is purpose designed for these applications, and it'll be a multiple use case vehicle. So the initial offering will be primarily the ride hailing, maybe some food deliveries, and because they're working with DoorDash on that, and then eventually other use cases. And the plan is for GM Cruise to own their fleet, to operate their own services.
But these investments are not, unfortunately right now, they're not about making money. They are about keeping up and getting prepared.
Well, they're about putting the pieces in place in order to try to make money, eventually.
Yeah, I mean, but the initial investments have to be made now. So it's a cost of doing business right now.
I mean, if you look at it, like Amazon in the 1990s, they lost money because they were investing in the infrastructure that they needed, first for fulfillment services, for fulfillment of the products that they were selling, and then also building out other infrastructure like what has become Amazon Web Services and
AWS.
Eventually their logistics services. So they invested in that infrastructure that would enable them to ultimately become profitable.
Right. And so that's unfortunately what GM has to do now.
Yeah, and Ford is going to be doing the same thing, and Volkswagen and Nissan and every other company that wants to get into this business.
Right.
And Waymo. I mean, Waymo is another example. They've been spending, Google, Alphabet has been investing billions of dollars into Waymo over the last 10 years, to do exactly the same kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'd like to see an automaker just ignore this stuff. Don't invest in it.
Mazda.
Right.
And
and Subaru.
You know why?
Subaru.
Because I think, and as a left turn, the automaker could say, you know what? Drive less. But those miles that you do drive,
enjoy them.
Make them really, really good miles. Right. And do we have a product for you.
As the license plate frame on my Miata says, driving matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a way where, as an automaker, you may feel like your days are numbered, and they could be. But you probably got another good 5 to 7 years before you actually have to really change your technology, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. I don't disagree. I think, obviously somebody has to make the investment to develop the technology, but it's
so you can license it, or you can buy them out of bankruptcy when they run out of investment.
Well, yeah, I mean, that may be what happens. But somebody's got to make that investment, to have something to buy out of bankruptcy, but. Not everybody needs to be doing it, and you can. I think the idea of perhaps being a fast follower is not necessarily the most foolish idea in this space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Totally agree.
Because there's going to be a lot of things over the next 5 to 7 years that stuff that we're talking about now that's just not going to pan out. And other things are just, they're going to go a much different way and evolve in a much different way than we could even imagine, because that's just how it works. So it's going to look very different. And a good amount of the things that are being worked on very hard now, they're either not going to make it or they're going to evolve differently. And so, if you just hold back and just look, look at what happened in the 70s, right? With the Wankel engine. Like, that was going to be the thing. And everybody was working on it. And at the end of the day, we got one.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's a lovely little piece of engineering, and we'll have a bunch of those little masterpieces around with autonomy and EVs and all of these different things. But some of them are just, they're not going to be adopted for whatever reason. So they might be really cool stuff that just doesn't take off. So.
And the adoption is not going to be, uniformly distributed when it happens. We're not going to see fleets of, automated, robo-taxis running around places like Chicago or Boston or Chicago or New York.
You can't. Let me tell you, you can't run anywhere in Boston. You could run with your feet,
fast.
But you can't. Yeah.
But what I'm getting at, there's a lot of places where it's going to be a lot longer before you see those kinds of vehicles because of things like weather conditions, especially winter weather, where they're just not going to be able to operate viably. You're not going to be able to run a sustainable business in using those kinds of technologies in those environments, at least not year round. So, we're going to see this stuff deploying in warm weather environments like Phoenix and like San Francisco and Miami, for many years before you start to see it in other places. And you're going to see a lot more of it in places like China, where it's increasingly difficult to even get a license plate, to register a vehicle in places like Shanghai or Beijing, because of the congestion and the air quality issues, and so the Chinese government is pushing this technology a lot harder than, for example, here in the U.S.
Yeah, that's something else we have to consider, which we don't consider all that much. There's a lot of other markets,
and this technology is expensive, and it's expensive to deploy, and it's expensive to support, and a new MIT study that just came out recently, took a look at the costs, and it's not at all clear, that this is necessarily going to be cheaper than human-driven vehicles.
Oh, I think for a long time it's not going to be.
No, I agree.
But and some of that is yes, that's kind of the argument against renewable energies versus natural gas or coal or something like that, right? Like, oh, it's so much more expensive to try these new technologies. Well, yeah, for a while, and then
eventually the price,
down, so.
As you scale it up, the price will come down.
Yeah,
and that's what's going to happen. Same thing's happening with electrification and with other technologies as well.
So let's you mentioned Mazda, and so we should pivot to Mazda, because they are kind of doing that. Like, whatever, you have fun with your batteries. We're gonna make a straight six.
Hey, the straight six is back.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Is it official? Do you guys know?
In their fiscal year 2019 report, they acknowledge that they're developing a new inline six-cylinder based on their Skyactiv X technology, which is just launching in Europe, and also a six-cylinder diesel. We'll see if the six-cylinder diesel actually makes it, but certainly the Skyactiv X, I think has a lot of potential. And Mazda's not the only one going back to inline sixes. Mercedes-Benz, launched a new inline six-cylinder engine, a 3-liter inline six last year. Jaguar Land Rover is developing a new inline six based on their 4-cylinder architecture. BMW BMW never left the inline six-cylinder. They've been there all along. So this could be really cool. Inline sixes are fantastic engines because they are so smooth.
So, Rebecca, I have an idea.
Okay.
The Miata
Yes.
has a 4-cylinder. So back in the day, there was the Spitfire, and then there was also the GT6. GT6, right?
Oh, it was also the TR6, yeah.
Yeah, well, the TR6 was, but the TR6 was a little better engineered. But the Triumph GT6 was basically the Spitfire
coupe, yeah,
with a coupe, coupe body.
I think my brother had one of those, actually.
Yeah, and it had the 6-cylinder was from the Herald or something.
Yeah,
it was never designed for it, and it just used to it was too much for the rest of the components, so they didn't really like it. But man, that was just a cool car. So they could make a new version of that, an RF with a inline 6, and I'm sure it would be better engineered than the Triumph.
Well, one could argue that with this move to mobility, that the cars that are made are things like a Triumph with a straight 6 stuffed inside of it. Because the cars that people will be, the few cars that are going to remain are going to be these fabulous, exotic, special cars.
I'll take it. Sounds good to me.
Right?
Well, it's funny when you think about horses, right? Horses are a luxury thing now.
Exactly.
So okay, well, that's fine.
Don't give up on the human-driven car yet. They are going to represent the vast majority of transportation for at least the next 15, 20 years.
Hey, look, we're putting 90 million of these cars on the road every year. New ones.
Are that many?
Globally. Sales.
90 million cars globally? That's how many?
Yeah,
it's
sales,
more. Yeah.
Is it higher than that now?
Yeah, I think it's about 91 or 92 now.
Yeah.
Where do they go?
Right?
China.
Now,
yeah, but like China, okay,
well,
so
17 million a year just here in the U.S. Another
and 20 something in China,
in Europe,
and 20 in China.
20. It's more. I think it's like
it's 24 now.
25, 26. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they got to 28. I think in 2017.
Now I don't know how many we net out. Right. So how many are taken off the road every year?
Our forecast from Navigant is hitting over 100 million annually by the mid-20s.
I mean, that's insane. That's incredible. Yeah. But how many are coming off the road? Do we know? Like, how many are we netting?
Far less than that.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure.
All we need is a good economic downturn, and we'll take some money from somewhere and pay people to throw the cars away.
Yeah.
Perfectly good cars. Yes. Throw them away.
Yeah. But so that's the thing is that, we, and because cars are lasting more than ever, that this is why this move to full autonomous vehicles isn't realistic in the timelines that people are talking about because just the fact is that we put 90 million or 100 million new cars on the road every year, and they're going to last for more than a decade. So, if not 15 years,
in some cases, 30 years or more.
Exactly.
Like mine.
So, right. So, at the minimum, I would say 10 years that we even begin to start taking some of the cars off the road that we bought last year.
So this is, for a horse will immediately get you an autonomous vehicle because they remember which way is home. And there's plenty of stories of, farm boys getting a little too much to drink one night, and yet the horse gets you home. So you can do that without having to buy a Tesla. They're all organic. You can even eat them when you're done with them. Probably not something that people want to do. I'm just saying. They completely decompose.
Send your emails to Dan.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I'm just trying to, complete the circle here. But also, this the autonomous cars, the technology is really interesting, and I'm sure it has applications. But a lot of the times, it strikes me as a solution looking for a problem where, you know, the most immediate thing we can do for air quality, for resources, for congestion, is just make it more of what we do to you know, aggressively reduce miles traveled, and so walk more. And the benefits of that are, you know, multifaceted, right? We don't get enough exercise. I sit most of the time at my job. So like,
I strongly suggest getting a puppy.
I have one, and
sweet little
he
Daisy.
pouts because he doesn't get walked enough. But
My puppy, you know, drags me out at least twice a day, you know, for a good brisk mile and a half walk. You know,
Right.
we do at least 3 miles a day, and she, you know, she's in great shape, and I'm getting in better shape.
right.
That's
But you
awesome.
also, so here's the other thing too. You work from home because you can, because
I
you
do.
have you
Yeah.
have a knowledge job, so you don't necessarily need to be at the widget factory.
Right.
So, you know, that is another way we can take cars off the road, like immediately. And so I'm just, you know,
Well, I
I'm
think
trying to do my
solar.
part.
I think solar is a really unrealized opportunity. I mean, I put solar panels on my house a couple of years ago, and I absolutely love them.
Did you buy or did you finance?
So I financed them. I leased them. I kind of wish
Okay.
I had bought them, but at the same time, it's you know, very low payment and such, and I'm pretty much self-sustaining.
Yeah.
you
Okay.
know.
So that's good.
Right. And I really like that. And I do want to look at getting a power pack or some kind of a battery, you know, wall system.
Yeah, that's a really good idea if you have solar,
Yeah.
is to have some sort of local storage.
Right.
energy
You
storage.
need enough land where you can build a pond. And so the solar runs the pump that moves the energy. You got two ponds, right? An upper pond and a lower pond, and in between you have a turbine. And, you know, when the sun shines, it pumps water up to the upper pond. And then when it's dark, it just runs it through the turbine and makes power. And yeah.
I
See,
haven't-
I'm not getting solar because my house is surrounded by big, beautiful, mature trees that cast huge shadows on the house.
Sam, you're supposed to cut them down and burn them.
well, and that's the thing, is that while it's not for everybody, there's plenty of missed opportunity there for solar.
Yeah, no,
in-
absolutely.
Solar
and,
in my
and,
mind.
you know, I mean, where I live in Michigan, you know, my utility is DTE Energy, and they've been putting in solar installations all over Southeast Michigan. You
Yeah.
know, and there's a couple of them within 10 miles of my house. So they're doing, you know, they are getting more and more renewable energy that they're feeding back into the grid, which is great.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of utilities give you the opportunity, to say, you prefer, you want renewable, you want solar or wind power. And usually they charge you a little bit of a premium. It's not too much. It's usually a few dollars a month. But that'll encourage the utility, to invest more in that technology.
Right. And then I'm also a big believer in a well-insulated house, so that you use
Yep.
less whatever heat and cooling. I mean, these are things I've done to my house that I just am amazed at, not only how much money I'm saving, but just how much less energy I'm using. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want to get rid of the trees, because they dramatically reduce the solar load on my house in the summertime.
Right.
Even when it's 90 degrees outside, it can be 75 degrees inside my house without turning on the air conditioning.
Yeah.
So here in Massachusetts, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, they have a program in certain towns. My town is one of them. They will give you trees. They came by and they said, yeah,
That's
we're gonna
great.
Put trees
That's
in.
awesome.
So they gave us 3 trees, and they're like, yeah, they'll
Oh,
grow to
and-
maturity, and they'll
And you know
shade
what
the
else
house.
trees do? They absorb
They
carbon
absorb CO2,
dioxide from the
yeah.
atmosphere.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's all of those ideas are they're on the table to reduce some of our energy consumption, and like we've got offshore wind going in and stuff too. So I think that where we can make those impacts now, regardless of what the cars do, because we're also going to have to get the electrons into the batteries of the EVs. So Yeah, it's a fascinating time. And so with your well insulated house too, are you using heat pumps that they're like the mini splits, so you can? That's one thing that, because the houses are so much tighter, you can use a much smaller and low consumption system for heating and cooling. And the mini splits work in both directions, so they can AC and heat.
I don't know if I have a mini split or not. I have a separate furnace and I have a separate AC.
Yeah. No, so that's a more traditional setup. The mini splits are little heat pump units, and they can absorb the heat from they basically move it. So it's like, that's what an air conditioner does. An air conditioner moves the heat, it absorbs it from one place and spits it out somewhere else, and they can run in both directions.
So the other thing I put in were ceiling fans.
Yeah.
And so
those are great too.
My house is an open concept. As built, it was built in '57, and it was built as an open concept. And even the hallway upstairs is open to the downstairs. So because we looked at doing zones, and it just
you can have one zone.
Right. So I have one zone.
So you run the ceiling fans in the winter to blow your heat back down, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you just reverse them.
So they're reversed, right? So again, I invested in new ceiling fans that are very efficient. And I think every once in a while in the summertime, I put it on the second level of 5 because it blows out the house. They're so powerful that I really only run them at the lowest speed. That's all I need to do. But then the heat will stay. I tend to keep my house a little cooler anyway, but the heat, it'll stay very comfortably between 68 and 69 with minimal running of the heat, and that's in the dead of winter. I mean, it's really, and in the summertime I can keep it at 74, and because my house is high up on a hill and it's actually built into the side of a hill, I did have some trees around, but most of them were just threatening the house, and they were hollow, and so I did have to do a lot of tree work when I bought in 2012. But the house also has an overhang, so the sun is dispersed away from the window, so it doesn't get a lot of direct heat. So it's, there again, I think I would just encourage people to look at your house situation. What can you do to make it more efficient, both inside and out? And also get newer air conditioners, because the newer air conditioners are cheap. They're $100, and they don't need to run nearly as much, and they run so much more efficiently. It's amazing.
And get a horse.
Get a horse and a dog.
And a dog, yeah. Get a menagerie. That's fine.
And I have to include a cat because I do take my cat for walks.
You take your cat,
and then you can go out and drive your GT350.
Right. I was gonna say let's bring it around full circle of cars. Okay. So this has been the House Bearings podcast. We did have a couple of questions on Twitter.
Oh wait, we still got something else. E-Tron.
Oh, I didn't know if you could talk about that or not.
Yeah, no, it's not under embargo.
Oh, yes, definitely regale us with tales of the E-Tron, because the E-Tron, was it one of the ones with the disappointing range?
Yes. Well, on paper, the EPA rating is somewhat disappointing. The official EPA rating came out a few weeks ago. We talked, I think, about it a little bit. 204 miles of range. However, having driven it yesterday, we drove. We had a drive program here in California. It went from Napa up to Sacramento and then up to Lake Tahoe, and the run from Napa to Sacramento was through some very pleasant canyon roads, California 128, and we drove it at a fairly brisk pace. We were not hypermiling this thing. So the E-Tron, the Audi E-Tron is, E-Tron Quattro is a mid-sized SUV. It's a little bit smaller than the Q8 and Q7. Fair bit larger than the Q5, but quite a bit smaller than, at least in terms of overall size, compared to the Tesla Model X. But actually packaged better, so there's actually more usable space in the e-tron than there is in the Model X. And as I said, the 204 mile official range, is on the disappointing side, for a vehicle with a 95 kilowatt hour battery. But Audi is not using the full capacity of the battery. They're only using 88 or 83.6 kilowatts of that, so they're using 88% of the battery capacity. In part, to protect the longevity of the battery. And what that does, the combination of having some margin at both at the low end and the high end of the battery capacity, and also really having a really aggressive thermal management, temperature management of the battery, gives them some interesting advantages, because the e-Tron's the first car on the road to support 150 kilowatt charging rates, and for DC fast charging. And Electrify America is the first charging network to support that. And at our lunch stop, we stopped at an Electrify America station and recharged. And we got some data from Audi, on the one of the things about DC fast charging, in order to protect the battery, one of the things that can damage a battery is if you overcharge it or overheat it while you're charging, or just overheat it in general. And so, in order to protect the battery from damage, once you get past a certain state of charge of the battery, they start to ramp down the charging power. And so Tesla superchargers, the current Tesla superchargers are rated at about 120 kilowatts. But once the battery gets to 50% charged, that's when it starts to taper it off. And by the time you get down to 100 kilowatts, it's or 100, up to 100% charge, it's only giving you about 10 kilowatts, which is about not much more than what you get for home charging off a 240 volt circuit.
Yep.
And what Audi's doing, as soon as you plug it in, it's getting 150 kilowatts. And it maintains that all the way up to 75% state of charge. And then it starts ramping down. And we were watching ours as it was charging. Even at 98% state of charge, it was still cranking out 57 kilowatts.
So that's how they can say, like, you can basically charge for 10 minutes and put about 55 miles of range back in the battery, because it'll charge that aggressively. And so their thermal management must be also equally aggressive, right? To make sure.
Yeah. So there's a cooling circuit that spans the entire underside of the battery. So it's and there's a cooling pump. So it's running coolant through there, keeping the temperature within its optimal range, and even all the way up to full charge. And because you've got that extra margin, even as you're approaching 100%, that 100% is 100% of the usable range. But it's when it's at 100%, the battery's still not 100% charged, because you've got some extra margin at the top end there that it's not using. So that's why they're able to, all the way up to the max that you can use, they can still keep charging at a higher rate. For example, the Nissan Leaf only the regular Leaf only supports 50 kilowatt charging maximum. And this is still doing 50 kilowatts even when it's 100% charge. And recently Tesla announced their version 3 superchargers, which they claim will go to 250 kilowatts.
Yeah.
However, that one, they showed the charging profile for that, based on the data that Tesla has released, and from 0% charge, it jumps up to 250 kilowatts, but it only stays at 250 kilowatts until about 15% charge. And then it starts ramping down.
See, so like they're going to have to come up with well, maybe there already exists sort of a common or like standardized way to give these kind of measurements. Like something like, we're going to give you the peak charging rate and then the RMS charging rates. You have maybe the average.
That might be a little too complicated, but I think. Talking about what Audi's doing is they're talking in terms of how many miles per minute you can get or miles per hour, or the thing that most companies talk about is the time to get from 0 to 80% charge.
Yep.
And in the case of Audi, 80% from a fully discharged battery, you can get to 80% in under 30 minutes. And then you can get to 100% in under an hour. So even though it's got less overall range, it's not quite as efficient as the Teslas. It will, you can recharge it faster, and because it maintains that peak charging power longer to a higher state of charge, if you're ramping down sooner, you might be inclined to discharge the battery more, to get it to a lower state of charge, so you spend more time at that peak power range, instead of at low charging power. This one, you don't even really have to think about it. You can just charge it whenever you want and still have near that peak power. And even at near full charge, you're still charging a lot faster than most other cars.
I think that overall, I mean, I drove the vehicle as well a few months ago. It's such a fantastic vehicle.
Oh yeah.
What strikes me is how normal it is.
Well, and that's
Yes.
that's the key thing that Audi talks about in this thing. Even last September when they had their reveal event here in San Francisco, talking to the Audi people then, said, I asked them, do you see this as a competitor to the Model X? Because I mean that's the obvious competitive set is the Model X. And they said no, not really. They're not trying to target Tesla customers with the e-Tron Quattro. They are targeting Audi customers, people that want an Audi. And this thing has all the attributes of an Audi. Nice, great exterior design, really nice interior, great materials and fit and finish. Great driving dynamics, and they want a car or a utility for customers that want an Audi but want to be electric. And so that has fed into a number of things about the way it behaves. Like, for example, they don't really emphasize the high regen. The default regen is more like what a conventional internal combustion engine does. You can choose a higher regen rate, but you can't really get into a mode where you're doing one pedal driving like you can with some other EVs, because they're basically trying to make it behave as much like a conventional vehicle as possible. Whether that strategy will work or not, we'll see. But I think based on what they have said that they want to do, I think they've succeeded at that. And we'll see if the market responds to that. This is, for its size, this is actually a fairly heavy vehicle. I mean, it's a 1,500-pound battery pack in there, and the vehicle itself weighs 5,700 pounds. So this is a very heavy vehicle. But driving it through those canyon roads,
I bet it's good.
because all that weight is in the bottom.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel. I mean, it feels more like what you would expect. A 4,000 to 4,500 pound vehicle.
Right, it drives like a heavy vehicle, but it's a really heavy vehicle.
But it's surprisingly nimble.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it really doesn't feel nearly as heavy as it is.
I'm impressed too that they promote towing with this thing. Like,
They do. We drove in the sand. I was in Abu Dhabi with it, and we drove through the sand.
Is really good too.
And the off-road was fantastic. I wish they called it the Q6E.
Yeah.
I really would have liked them to have a normal name.
E-Tron. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's so good and it's so normal that it deserves just a regular name.
Yeah, and I think going forward, I think this is their naming strategy for this one is kind of going to be a one-time thing, kind of like the original Quattro, the Quattro back in the 1980s, was just the Quattro coupe. And then later Quattro became an adjective that they added on to other models that had all-wheel drive. This is the e-Tron Quattro. The next one that's coming at the end of the year is the e-Tron Sportback.
Yes, which is gorgeous.
And then going forward, I think we're just going to see the e-Tron being a descriptor added on to whatever the model name is, and that's what they talked about.
Good.
The one thing that has changed with this one, from existing Audis, is the infotainment system, the HMI, in this one. They have gotten. It doesn't have the central MMI control knob. It's got it's just a touchscreen, and it's a little bit different from most touchscreens because you actually have to press a little harder on the screen. It's not a moving screen, but you have to press a little harder, and there is haptic feedback behind it. So when you press on it, it's kind of like current MacBook touchpads. So you press on it, and you'll feel what feels like a click. So there's a haptic feedback behind it, and it does take a little getting used to. I mean, most touchscreens you just tap on it, and it responds. This one you do actually have to press on it for it to respond, and I'm not sure I like it.
Yeah, it took a little more getting used to, but I think overall though, it's a really, really good example of how normal an electric vehicle can be. And they got a lot of flack for the range, and I think our Twitter followers will know this. But I said on Twitter, I will trade 30 or 40 miles of range for a stable dealer network and service network.
Yeah. Well, and even to the range question, I'm pretty convinced now that Audi was sandbagging on the range, because if you look at the EPA ratings, it's 204 miles. It's rated at 46 kilowatt hours per 100 miles of energy consumption. On the first leg of our trip yesterday, it was about 75 miles from Napa to Sacramento, and that it was pretty aggressive driving.
Right.
we were not hypermiling this thing, and we got 45 kilowatt hours per 100 miles. So we did a little bit better, not much, but given the way we were driving, it was actually pretty impressive. We did better than the EPA efficiency rating.
Yeah.
And I think if you drove it, more normally, you would probably get significantly better. And I suspect that in typical driving, you could probably achieve, without too much difficulty, 230, 240 miles of range out of this thing.
So they initially had told us that the initial range was 250 miles per charge is what I had written down.
That's based on the WLTP drive cycle. That's the European drive cycle, which is a little more optimistic than the U.S. drive cycle.
And we drove the European spec, because then in the article I wrote, then it continues to talk about that the U.S. would deliver 210 miles was what they were telling us back in December. So that was right in the range. And again, I think that people need to understand that I do think they underestimated a little bit, but I think you're going to have a very different ownership experience having an Audi versus the Tesla and the usability. The Model X, those falcon wing doors are ridiculous. And so this is it's just a very normal car.
One of the standard features on the e-tron is roof rails. So you can put a bike rack on there on the roof like you do on an SUV.
Right, exactly.
And the doors, they always work. They open when you want them to, and they close when you want them to.
Well, yeah, but okay, so I like this approach, and I think the stuff like the Falcon doors are gimmicky, but I also don't want to sort of gleefully throw rocks at Tesla right now anyway, because at least they tried it. They had to do their own thing to make their cars distinctive and unique, and they've really pushed the idea of premium EVs with features that you can't get anywhere else. So
hey, I've always been an Elon Musk fan.
I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but
but just a realist. But Tesla, though, I'm glad they're in the industry. We need them in the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, this vehicle
Absolutely.
And the Jaguar I-Pace and the Mercedes EQC and all these other EVs that are coming probably would not exist, certainly not in the form that they do, had it not been for Tesla and the degree of success that they've had. And Tesla deserves enormous credit for that, as I've repeatedly said. For legitimizing the idea that an EV could be something really appealing in and of its own right, without being a glorified golf cart. And
Right.
this is by no means a glorified golf cart. I mean, this is one of the things about the e-tron that we found, it's exceptionally quiet when it comes to wind noise. I mean, there's virtually no wind noise in this thing, and they
Right.
don't use active noise control on it. I mean, it's very, very the airflow is very well controlled. So I think that I'm pretty sure this vehicle will be quite successful for Audi.
I hope so. I hope it gives people a reason to move into an electric vehicle without feeling like they've compromised, their lifestyle or their driving experience. I do think this is a really good example of where you can swap out your internal combustion engine and actually potentially have a better driving experience than with an internal combustion engine. So I'm a huge fan. I would love to see about getting one of these because I just think they're fantastic.
Oh, one more thing. When you buy an e-tron Quattro, it comes with a 9.6 kilowatt home charging unit.
Yes.
That comes in the car, comes packed in the car, and if you have a NEMA 1450 socket in your garage, you can just plug it right in. If not, they've got a deal with Amazon, to connect you with local contractors or electricians that can come in. They're all trained and vetted, to come in and install the outlet for you, and you just plug it in. And the nice thing about that unit, the cord that plugs into that socket, you can actually unplug it from the wall unit, and they've got different adapters. So if you already have some other socket, you can get different adapters that plug into different types of sockets. And that comes bundled with the car.
See that?
It's really well thought out.
Yeah, that is the retail and customer service experience and imagination being brought to bear, to make that customer experience work really well,
Right.
So that
Yep.
your early adopters aren't beta testing for you.
Right. Exactly.
So I mean, I hope it's a success. I mean, you're right. It looks great. It seems like it's really, really well engineered to just deliver no matter what you do. I'll be interested to see when it hits the magazine tests, like instrumented tests, whether they can do the type of quarter mile and skid pad testing and stuff with it without it overheating.
Yeah. And that should not be a problem because in addition to liquid cooling of the battery pack, Audi, their motors, their motor design, their motors are also liquid cooled, and they have an external water jacket around the outside of the motor, and then there's also what they call a cooling lance. There's a spindle, a lance that goes through the center of the motor, through the rotor, that circulates coolant through that as well. So it's cooled from both the inside and the outside. And they said that the goal was to make sure you didn't have any loss of performance when driving aggressively with this.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's the key, right? You could talk about ludicrous mode and all that nonsense, and the 0 to 60 electric car thing is just tired. But
they're not claiming Tesla levels of acceleration. 0 to 60 is going to be about 5.5 seconds.
Oh, who cares? That's quick. That's fine.
That's more than quick enough. Yeah.
I can't wait to see them on the road.
And it's also got Alexa voice services built right into the infotainment system, so you can use your e-tron as an Amazon Echo device to control all your stuff at home.
Oh, there you go,
that.
and it'll spy on you and in return.
You love that, Dan.
Well, actually, it doesn't. You do have to press the button on the steering wheel to activate it. So you just, instead of saying,
oh, it's not waiting for the
whatever.
watchwords.
Yeah, it's not listening for a watchword. It only listens when you press the button.
There you go. It's like my kids, except for there's no button to press. They just don't listen.
You got to take them back and get a button installed.
Yeah. No, they're better at pushing my buttons.
Yes, that's their job.
That's what kids will do. That.
All right. Let's hit the questions because we had just a couple of really light ones. The first one was from Twitter from Sam Minetti, He's asking, is a $65,000 Jeep Gladiator worth it, or should he wait for the Land Rover Defender?
Oh, those are two different.
Well, Defender's not going to be a pickup.
Right. Those are two different vehicles.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's an apple and orange
if you're
question.
comparing Defender, you got to talk about Wrangler, not Gladiator.
Yeah.
But as the only one, you haven't driven the Gladiator, right, Dan?
I haven't. I had an opportunity that I blew because I was too busy ogling the Ram.
This one's for you, Rebecca.
Yes.
Is it? Would you take a Wrangler now, or even a Gladiator now, over a Defender tomorrow?
I really liked the Gladiator. The Defender, the Defender, though, it won't be a pickup truck. So the Gladiator, I would buy a Wrangler.
So we got to say Wrangler.
Yeah, okay. So, that's a tough one. I mean, I do love the Wranglers, but man, the Defenders, I just love the Defender. So
well,
I would
okay,
probably have to go.
Okay, so let's say Wrangler, a Wrangler Rubicon, is going to be in the low to mid $50,000.
Oh, you can easily make it 60,000 with all the gingerbread they sell you.
Okay, so let's say a $60,000 Wrangler Rubicon.
Yeah.
Would you take that over a Defender?
Probably not, because I love the uniqueness of the Defender. But from a value standpoint, and I think the Wrangler is going to hold its value really, really well. But the Defender is going to be a huge hit for Land Rover because there's tons of people that want that vehicle, and it's going to provide a lot of competition for the Wrangler for sure.
Well, so here's
amongst the billionaires, because it's the Jeep is the billionaires and busboys brand, but Land Rover is all about the billionaires.
But here's an interesting thing that they got a question when Jeep was up here, our FCA. Somebody asked, what about a Wrangler that you guys put an upgraded interior in, and you make it like a super luxury, like almost like a G-Wagon competitor Wrangler? And of course they sort of smile and they say, well, we're not going to comment on future product, but you should keep an eye on things, which to me says like they've at least had that discussion about making.
Well, and they should have that discussion.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of competition, especially with the new and really comfortable ride that both the Wrangler and the Gladiator provide now. So, that's something that you could see these vehicles as daily drivers, which Land Rover definitely is.
Yeah.
So the luxury part, if you are somebody that is very focused on luxury, then you are going to buy the Land Rover. No question.
I would very much rave about a luxury Wrangler. I wouldn't be able to afford it, but I would rave about it.
No, I agree. I think that there's opportunity there because the buyer has shown incredible tolerance for a higher price. But you do start to run into the very fair question here. They're talking about different body styles, but a Land Rover versus a Jeep, it's a huge credit to Jeep that's even a question.
That's true.
That's amazing.
What do you think the starting price of the Defender is going to be?
Well, honestly, I haven't done a lot of research on it, so I'm not sure what they're going towards. But, look at all the pricing that we've talked about today. It's got to be, I think, they could go in the high 40s because some of the Land Rovers.
You think it'll be that low?
Well, it could be, but they could do a very base, stripped down, vintage version of it, and then doll it up and get one that's highly charted up.
To help me out here, though, the Defender is not replacing like the LR4.
Defender's not replacing anything. The Defender's not replacing anything. It used to be sold in the States years ago.
Yeah, no, I remember
and they're
that.
Bringing it. Yeah,
it was a different Defender.
I think it's strictly incremental.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think, you know what?
Well, because but look at, so the Sport starts at 37,990, and then the Disco goes at 52. So, there's room in there. They could put the Defender right in that 42 to 45 range. The Evoque is 41.8. So, and the new Evoque is 42. So they're not as extreme as people think. That's, again, very base. But there's room in there. They could put that. Now, they don't have anything. Well, the Disco's 52. So they've got something at 37 in the low 40s, high 40s, 52, and then it jumps to 68. So they could definitely do something in that 40s range. And you're also talking about a different buyer, because there's plenty of people that are not interested in something as rugged and authentic as the Defender, I think, will be.
You know what? I'm going to say get your jollies with the Jeep now, because you can buy it. And then when the Defender arrives, drive it. And if you like it, trade the Jeep on it, because it's going to have a ton of residual.
There you go.
Yes.
There's a logical answer for you.
There you go.
Making sense tonight. All right. And so the
Hey, even a stuck clock is right twice.
Yeah, there it is. The other question that we had was from our friend Dan Mosquito. Is just I think he's joking, but he's asking if he should buy Tesla stock. Which no. You should not buy Tesla stock.
We don't give financial advice.
You should also not buy Uber stock, even though
we are not a stock analyst team.
I think you should.
You should do your research.
Don't buy stock.
Do your due diligence.
Buy an index fund.
Don't buy stock.
And leave it alone. And that's that. Unless you like to gamble, and you know what? Then take all of your money and go put it on red in Vegas, and probably do that as well. All right, that's pretty much a podcast. So if you want to get in touch with us, we are at wheelbearingscast@gmail.com. Coming soon, by the way, is a email newsletter, and I'll have more about that, but I actually set up the post office box so we can actually do the newsletter because of privacy laws. You need to now have a physical mailing address. So we do. And so we'll get that going, and you can sign up for it. That's coming soon, once I figure out MailChimp. But in the meantime, please head over to Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a review there, or iTunes, or in the podcatcher of your choice. You can comment on the post at wheelbearings.media, and our Twitter handle is @wheelbearingscast. The only vowel is the A in cast. And everybody else generally knows where to find us. So thanks for listening, and here's hoping something interesting happens before the next show.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right. So, Amy Mirentic, your new role now at Ford, now that you're back from China?
So it's a new group that they put together called EPLM. It stands for Enterprise Product Line Management. And it's a group that's actually focused on owning the product from end to end, focusing on the customer, profit and loss, and the entire business.
And is that applying to all the different product lines across Ford now?
It does. We have several groups. We have one focused on trucks, one on commercial vehicles, one on utilities, and the one that I work on is icons, so our iconic vehicles. Yeah,
and that's a new one. I mean, Ford has always had some iconic models like Mustang and various others, but specifically having this group called Icons is something new for Ford. And why is this particular group being created?
Well, it's a unique customer, right? And what we've done is we've combined Mustang, the Ford performance vehicles like GT500, GT350, the Raptor, the Ford GT, and then also we'll be bringing out a new vehicle, Bronco, which is very iconic. So that is our group of vehicles that we focus on.
And what is the overall strategy for the Icons, and what are you trying? Aside from obvious the heritage of some of those models, what's the direction you're trying to go with that group?
Well, it's making sure that these vehicles are fit for the next 100 years. Mustang's been around for 55 years, but making sure that we're focused on the customer, focused on the business, and making sure that these are delighting our customers for years to come.
And it's kind of an odd grouping, obviously. Everything from GT to Raptor to the various Mustang variants and Bronco. And you mentioned going into the next 100 years. What do you see happening with these kinds of vehicles as we transition forward into this new era?
It's interesting. You're seeing vehicles like Bronco now show up at Barrett-Jackson, right? So things are changing a little bit. The definition of icon changes a bit, but making sure that we're relevant and taking care of the customers that love us. And the one thing that's unique about every icon vehicle at Ford is the passion that the consumers bring to the product and to the business, frankly.
And they're not necessarily high volume vehicles, but they're still important to the Ford brand. From a business standpoint, what makes it so important to maintain these niche products as part of the Ford lineup?
I think it's important to have vehicles that are aspirational. I look at my Raptor, and my son will sit and watch on his phone Raptor videos for minutes or hours on end. Same thing with Mustang. And it's important we keep these vehicles relevant, not only for people in my generation, but also people in my children's generation.
And what when you talk about relevance, what do you see as what sorts of things need to be done with these vehicles to keep them relevant in the 2020s and beyond?
Well, I think the thing that we're really good at is listening to the customer, and the iconic customers, the customers that are buying the Raptors and the Mustangs, are very opinionated. They know what they want, and they know what's important to them. And the thing that we're really good at, and we continue to focus on, is making little improvements all the time. News every year, making like the GT350. This year we're just making it a little bit better.
Yeah, new tires, new suspension tuning.
New tires, better aerodynamics, chassis tuning.
Last year, a little more than a year ago, Ford announced that going forward, all of its utility vehicles were going to have electrified powertrain options. Ford has also previously talked about the Mustang hybrid that's coming. Is that part of is incorporating newer technologies like that? Is that a key part of keeping those vehicles relevant, in addition to also just trying to give the customers what they want?
Yeah, I absolutely think. Several years ago we launched the EcoBoost engine. It's now a core part of our vehicle strategy, whether it's on a Mustang or on an Explorer. And I think you're going to see that as we move into electrification. You're going to see it coming in on several different vehicles because that's where the market's going, and that's what customers are looking for. But we'll still continue with our naturally aspirated and our EcoBoost engine, so we have something for everybody.
Do you see fully electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, being part of the Icon lineup at some point in the not too distant future?
Yeah, I think that's where the future's heading. We'll go there mindfully, but I do think you'll see some battery electric vehicles part of the Icon family.
The Mustang-inspired battery electric crossover is coming. Is that going to be part of the Icon group, or is that something separate?
So right now it is part of the Icons group, but we also make sure that we're working very closely with the other EPLM group that is our electric vehicle group. So we work together with that team.
All right. Thank you very much, Amy.
Thanks.